Just moments ago, breaking news rocked the basketball world. Caitlin Clark, the unstoppable force who's taken the WNBA by storm, has allegedly decided to walk away from the game entirely. This sudden move comes after a shocking incident that no one saw coming. So, was it brewing tension in the locker room, mounting pressure from critics, or a deeply personal turning point? Fans are stunned, teammates are speechless, and the league is left reeling. Let's uncover the real reason behind Caitlin Clark's jaw-dropping decision to quit the WNBA. The earthquake shaking the WNBA. If Caitlin Clark were to walk away, the aftershocks would be felt from Indianapolis to every corner of the sporting world. It wouldn't just rattle the Indiana fever. It would shatter the commercial foundation the WNBA has carefully built, leaving millions of fans in disbelief and heartbreak. Yet, even the brightest stars sometimes reach a point where the glare becomes too much. At just 22 years old, wearing her now iconic number 22 jersey, Clark has become far more than a player. She is the Indiana Fever's lifeline, their centerpiece, their reason to dream again. Since the WNBA tipped off in 1997, few, if any, have redefined the sport as she has in her rookie season. Her numbers alone sound like the stuff of seasoned veterans. 19, 2 points, 8 for assists and 7 rebounds per game. But numbers can only tell part of this story. In 2024, she dragged the Fever out of a 7-year playoff drought, returning them to the postseason for the first time since 2016. But Clark's impact can't be contained by a scoreboard, because what she's done off the court may be even more staggering. From the moment Indiana announced her as their top draft pick, ticket sales exploded. Not by a modest percentage, but by over 400%. That surge was so powerful it forced the Fever to abandon smaller venues altogether. Game after game, Gainbridge Fieldhouse was packed to capacity, a sight that had once been a rarity. And it wasn't just the stands filling up. Television audiences that once hovered in the hundreds of thousands suddenly rocketed past the million mark whenever Clark took the floor. Some matchups even soared above 2 million viewers, numbers that women's basketball had never touched before. It was as though she had flipped a switch, making the WNBA not just a sports league, but a cultural event. Corporate America noticed, too. Sponsorship deals flooded in, many tailored specifically to harness Clark's magnetic marketability. These weren't the traditional modest partnerships women's sports had been used to. They were major revenue streams, entirely new financial lifelines that didn't exist before she arrived in Indiana. In less than a single season, Caitlin Clark had managed something that decades of marketing campaigns couldn't. She had transformed the WNBA into appointment viewing. She wasn't just lifting the Fever. She was lifting the entire league onto a bigger stage, altering its economic DNA. And all of this happened in months. Proof that sometimes one player doesn't just change the game, she changes the game's place in the world. So, what unseen pressure pushed Caitlin to this breaking point? And could they rewrite her legacy?
Stay tuned.
Her real story is only beginning. Power, pressure, and the price of stardom. The surge Caitlin Clark has created in the WNBA isn't confined to a single team's success. It's rewritten the league's very pulse. Television ratings have soared. Merchandise sales have smashed previous records. Media outlets that once gave the WNBA a passing mention now dedicate prime airtime and headlines to its every twist and turn. Clark's presence has made the league impossible to ignore, transforming her into a global sports icon in record time. Which is why whispers of her potential departure don't just sound like speculation, they feel like a looming earthquake. But what could possibly drive an athlete of her stature to consider walking away from the sport she's electrified? The answer lies in the invisible weight that comes with such meteoric success. For Clark, the leap from the comparative freedom of college basketball to the hard edges of professional sports hasn't just been about tougher opponents on the court. It's been about navigating a business machine that operates under constraints and rules most fans never see. The WNBA, despite Clark's seismic impact, still operates under a salary cap that feels like a relic from another era. The maximum any player can earn hovers around $250,000 per year, a figure that pales in comparison to the millions her marketability likely generates annually for the league. Her rookie contract standard under WNBA guidelines ties her to the Indiana Fever through team options and restricted free agency. These clauses designed to protect teams have the side effect of severely limiting player mobility. For athletes in other major leagues, dissatisfaction can often be met with trades, free agency, or contract renegotiations. For Clark, the system is far less flexible. Even if she were to feel trapped or undervalued, her ability to shift her situation would be locked behind the very rules meant to preserve competitive balance. The collective bargaining agreement that dictates these structures was negotiated long before Clark's arrival and certainly before the league realized how profoundly one player could alter its commercial fortunes. The financial frameworks put in place years ago no longer reflect the reality of what an elite high-visibility athlete like Clark contributes. And so behind the cheers, behind the sold-out arenas and record-breaking TV numbers, there's a quiet, complicated tension, a gap between what she brings to the WNBA and what the WNBA, under its current rules, can give back. It's a gap that isn't just about money. It's about freedom, recognition, and the evolving definition of value in women's sports. But is Caitlin ready to challenge the very system that built her fame or walk away entirely? Stick around. The answer might shock you. Caitlin Clark at the crossroads. When stardom outgrows the system. For athletes whose value towers above their paycheck, the game often becomes as much about contracts as it is about competition. Legal experts say this is the quiet struggle behind many of sports' biggest headlines. The moment when a player's market worth explodes beyond the rigid limits of a league's salary structure. In the WNBA, where the maximum salary sits far below what an icon like Caitlin Clark generates in ticket sales, TV deals, and corporate sponsorships, the mismatch is glaring. The challenge grows sharper when that superstar's revenue impact overshadows that of her teammates. Yet, she is bound by the same pay scale as everyone else. For Clark, whose every step on the court is broadcast to millions and whose jersey sales dominate the league, this imbalance is more than a number. It's a constant reminder of a system not built for someone like her. And then there's the human toll. Professional basketball doesn't just drain the body, it wears on the mind. Clark faces a level of scrutiny rare in women's sports history. Every pass, every shot, every offhand comment, dissected in real time by analysts, amplified on social media, debated by strangers. The glare of that spotlight doesn't dim when the game ends. It follows her into every corner of her life. Sustaining peak performance under that kind of pressure demands more than skill. It demands a mental toughness that even the best can find exhausting over time. It's no wonder then that whispers of alternative paths have us. Borders lies a world of professional opportunities where the pay is higher, the travel more comfortable, and the cameras slightly less intrusive. In Europe, the women's basketball scene offers some of the most lucrative contracts in the sport. The EuroLeague women, along with powerhouse clubs in Turkey, Russia, and Spain, have long been magnets for elite talent. These teams don't just offer bigger paychecks, often far surpassing the WNBA's maximum. They also cover housing, transportation, and other perks that ease the strain of life on the road. The competition is fierce, the arenas are full, and the quality of life can be dramatically better. Australia's Women's National Basketball League is another rising force, pairing competitive salaries with world-class facilities and a season that fits neatly into the WNBA's off-season. For players like Clark, it's not just an escape. It's a chance to keep playing at the highest level while exploring a different kind of professional freedom. Now, what happens when that freedom starts to feel like a cage? Stay with us, because the truth is more shocking than you think. When the face of the league feels trapped, the numbers tell a story that no amount of applause can erase. Based on her sheer impact on the WNBA's growth, ticket sales, TV ratings, sponsorship deals, Caitlin Clark's annual worth stretches into the millions. Not in projections, not in hype, in hard, measurable reality. And while outside endorsements pad her bank account, the league she single-handedly elevated still pays her a fraction of that value. It's a contradiction that gnaws at her day after day. She's not the first WNBA player to run headfirst into this pay gap, but she is the first to pull the entire league into the national spotlight while collecting a salary that barely reflects the enormity of her influence. Fans roar her name in sold-out arenas. Cameras track her every move, and broadcasters build entire storylines around her. Yet behind the curtain, she's locked into a system that thrives on her image while refusing to truly invest in her future. That's the part that stings the most. Not just the money, but the lack of control. The rookie contract she signed in 2024 wasn't written with leverage in mind. Like every WNBA rookie deal, it's a cage disguised as an opportunity. Team options that keep her tied to the franchise, restricted free agency that blocks her from testing her value, and a framework carefully engineered to limit player movement. Even if Clark wanted change, her hands are tied. She can't force a trade. She can't renegotiate for what she's worth. And she certainly can't leap to a bigger payday elsewhere. Not in a league where freedom isn't a right, but a privilege reserved for a select few. The collective bargaining agreement cementing these rules was inked long before Clark became the most marketable athlete women's basketball has ever seen. Before she proved that one player could single-handedly alter the economics of an entire sport. Now she's bound by outdated terms that don't just undervalue her, they ignore the new reality she created. Meanwhile, the WNBA cashes in on the Clark effect. Attendance record shattered. Merchandise sales off the charts. Sponsorship revenue skyrocketing. And yet, the woman at the center of it all remains hemmed in by a deal that offers her none of the flexibility, reward, or agency her male counterparts in other leagues enjoy. Legal analysts call this imbalance a common theme in women's sports. But Clark's case isn't common. It's unprecedented. She's not merely a star player. She's the brand, the storyline, and the profit margin. And as she starts to grasp the full weight of that truth, one question grows louder in her mind. Why should the brightest talent in the game stay silent while everyone else gets paid? And how did a single question spark a battle far bigger than basketball? Stay glued. The real story is just unraveling. The weight of being more than a player. By the summer of 2025, Caitlin Clark was no longer just the Indiana Fever star. She was their identity. Her name had become shorthand for the WNBA's resurgence. Her image a constant presence in commercials, interviews, and highlight reels. But the spotlight, as dazzling as it seemed from the outside, carried a heat that few could endure for long. Clark's knowledge of the game and her natural command on the court had always hinted at a future in coaching, a path where her vision could shape teams without the relentless demands of playing. But right now, she was still in uniform, expected not only to perform at an elite level, but also to act as the league's chief ambassador, spokesperson, and symbol of progress. It wasn't just about leading a team. It was about carrying an entire movement on her shoulders. With that role came pressures no stat sheet could capture. Every public comment was dissected. Every performance was tied to the WNBA's broader narrative. Every off day was met with headlines speculating on her health, her happiness, or her future. For Clark, it was a constant test of mental endurance, one that rarely allowed her to simply enjoy the game she loved. Inside the Fever organization, the change had been swift and dramatic. Ticket offices, media departments, and sponsorship teams had all reoriented themselves around the Clark era. But as much as it revitalized the franchise, it also shifted team dynamics in subtle and sometimes uncomfortable ways. When one player becomes the gravitational center of an entire operation, it can strain relationships with teammates, with coaches, even with the front office. For Clark, questions lingered. Did the Fever's leadership share her long-term vision? Did the coaching staff understand how to manage not just her minutes, but her mental load? Was the organizational culture truly built to support someone in her unique position? Or was it simply designed to maximize the benefits of her fame? Team chemistry, she knew, was more than a buzzword. It was the invisible glue that kept a season from splintering under pressure. And while her individual accolades mounted, the balance between her personal spotlight and the team's collective identity became harder to maintain. Every sold-out arena, every spike in TV ratings, every sponsorship announcement was a reminder that she wasn't just part of the Fever. She was the Fever. Leading under those conditions required more than skill. It demanded political savvy, emotional intelligence, and a level of organizational support that, in Clark's eyes, didn't always match the weight of what she was being asked to carry. And slowly, she began to wonder if staying in this role meant sacrificing too much of herself for the sake of the game. So, what did Caitlin finally realize? And could it be the moment she walks away forever? Keep watching. When the game stops being enough. By 2025, Caitlin Clark wasn't just a star athlete. She was a living benchmark for what women's basketball could become. But as her fame grew, so did her awareness of the machine she was working inside. League policies, contract structures, and decision-making processes weren't just abstract rules. They were daily realities shaping her career, her income, and her sense of control. And increasingly, those realities didn't align with her vision for her future. Clark understood the business side of the WNBA in a way few rookies ever do. She could see how league leadership set the tone, how strategic decisions determined player opportunities, and how little room there was for elite athletes too. More financially viable. New sponsorships were pouring in across sports. Women's leagues were expanding globally, and media coverage was reaching audiences that once seemed unreachable. For players like Clark, that meant something revolutionary. Real alternatives. Through social media, she had built an audience in the millions. Followers who didn't just watch her games, but followed her every move, every word, every moment. That kind of reach came with power. She could launch her own initiatives, collaborate directly with brands, or step into entirely new arenas without asking permission from any league office. For the first time, a WNBA player didn't need the WNBA to stay relevant. Corporate America had noticed, too. The endorsement deals on Clark's table were not just side income. They were often worth more than her actual player salary. Shoes, apparel, tech brands, lifestyle campaigns. These partnerships offered not only financial stability, but also creative freedom. And with enough of them, she could shape a career on her own terms, free from the constraints of outdated salary caps and rigid contracts. But this wasn't just about money. Carrying the weight of an entire sport's expectations had begun to press into every corner of her life. Every appearance, every interview, every headline was a reminder that she wasn't only representing herself. She was representing the future of women's basketball. That kind of responsibility could be thrilling. It could also be suffocating. For Clark, the question was becoming impossible to ignore. If the world beyond the WNBA offered more freedom, more reward, and more control, why keep playing a game where she had everything to lose and not nearly enough to gain? And could the truth behind her next move rewrite everything we thought we knew about Caitlin Clark's legacy? You won't want to miss this. The weight of the crown. By mid-2025, Caitlin Clark had become far more than a basketball player. She was the living emblem of women's basketball's rise. Every game she played, every word she spoke, every public move she made was treated as a reflection of the sport's health and its future. Her presence on the court was electrifying, but it also distorted the lens through which the league was viewed. When Clark soared, the sport was thriving. When she stumbled even slightly, questions swirled. Being the face of a movement meant obligations that stretched far beyond the three-point line. There were corporate events, sponsorship shoots, youth clinics, charity galas, halftime interviews, and endless autograph sessions. Cameras followed her, not just in arenas from Indianapolis to Seattle, but in airports, restaurants, and family gatherings. Every decision, whether professional or personal, could be dissected online within minutes. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was a constant performance with the audience watching even when the spotlight was off. For an athlete who craved time to refine her craft and live life away from the noise, the weight of those expectations was heavy. Family played a growing role in her thoughts. Holidays missed, celebrations skipped, and long stretches away from the people who grounded her. Friends, mentors, and a tight support network reminded her that happiness wasn't just about championships or MVP trophies. It was also about balance, peace, and having the space to grow outside the game. But the business realities were just as pressing. WNBA contracts, binding, restrictive, and modest compared to her market value, were at odds with the revenue she generated for the league. Legal analysts openly questioned whether the structure could withstand the pressure from athletes like Clark, whose brand power far exceeded what the salary cap could offer. Her endorsements already outpaced her playing income, and that gap was widening. Shoe deals, media projects, and creative partnerships didn't just provide more money, they provided more control. Beyond sports, opportunities in tech, media, and business beckoned. Startups in sports analytics, women's health, and performance technology saw her as a natural partner. Her grasp of the game's technical side and her credibility with fans made her an asset in boardrooms as much as on the hardwood. Entertainment executives pitched her television and documentary projects, envisioning her as a voice for a new era of women's sports storytelling. In private conversations, some close to Clark wondered aloud if the real risk wasn't her walking away. It was the WNBA failing to adapt in time. Losing her would mean more than the loss of a superstar. It would signal that the league couldn't hold on to the very talents it had built its future around. So, what do you think truly pushed Clark to step away? Pressure, politics, or something even deeper? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more WNBA stories.